Hello world and welcome to Questions in Gaming, the only show on YouTube which can claim to be Walmart game theory. In today's theory, we're going to be talking about what is an iron golem. I'm your host, Jackson or Cyber, whatever you want to go with, and I'm sure many of you are wondering, what is this thing? And to be fair, I've been wondering the same thing since I started playing Minecraft. So today we're going to be going over some of the possibilities and what I think the Iron Golem might be in Minecraft and what it could mean for the greater Minecraft lore. Insert plushie. Let's go. So, Iron Golem is a large mob which can be found in the villages in Minecraft. It's supposed to protect the villages, and it mostly does that, or works as an iron farm, either one. Many speedrunners also use it because, again, free iron. But that's not what it's really meant to do in the lore. It's supposed to be the protector of the village and stops any pillager raids or anything like that. Now, we don't know if it actually works. We just kind of assume, considering the villages aren't burnt, which I mean, fair enough. But we don't know for sure. Another important thing about the Iron Golem is that we can see it visibly takes damage, unlike most mobs in Minecraft, where if you hit them, they'll just have some lost hearts, but you can't tell. With the Iron Golem, it visibly will take damage over time. This has led many people to assume that it has some greater meaning, potentially within the game. After all, it's the only mob like this and is pretty unique to it. The golem also has a face that resembles a villager, however the rest of its body looks nothing like it. This has led some to speculate that it could be created by villagers, which is a theory we'll be going over later, but it also has led many to say that it has nothing to do with villagers and some third party creates it. Again, theory that we're going to go over in a few minutes. The golem also, pretty importantly, is a tall mob, which is very uncommon in Minecraft, especially for passive mobs and neutral mobs. It's 3 blocks tall and also wide. It looks honestly kind of buff for a Minecraft mob, which has led many to create certain mods, which are interesting. As a Bedrock player, I've never been more happy to not have mods. We always kind of assume that it always will beat the villagers, which is a fair assumption considering that, again, the villages are not on fire yet. But we don't know for sure, so while I am going to go by the assumption in all these theories that they tend to beat the pillagers, we're also going to have to assume that they don't always win, as that would be fairly unrealistic to what happens likely in reality. A fellow YouTuber by the name of Stay Shorts has suggested a theory. He suggests that the golem is made with villagers using the jobs. The origins of the jobs blacksmith, cleric, and toolsmith are all the results of the iron golem, whether it be directly or indirectly. He suggests that emeralds somehow have a sense of magic to them, which allows them to create iron golems and give life to them. This is due to the fact that the zombie virus, as he calls it, is a horde of undead mobs essentially, which explains the zombie villagers that you can find in the game. He says that due to the extreme amount of damage that the undead mobs and the pillagers do, that the villagers decided to create the iron golem. The blacksmith found all the resources like iron, the toolsmith created the weaponry that he uses, aka arms, and the cleric is the one who found the emeralds, the emerald being the thing that he suggests powers the iron golem, explaining why the villagers need so many. Now, while I'm not saying that this is impossible, I am going to raise to question the idea that emeralds have magic, considering if they did have magic and the player cannot harness it, it wouldn't really make sense that a villager could. especially everything that we know about the villagers seeming like honestly kind of just worse players with their humanoid features, yet inability to build and craft. Or maybe craft, we don't know that one for sure actually. Now, emeralds having magic is a pretty major issue because there's not much that supports this idea. I guess you could argue the fact that the cleric sells certain items supports it, and that villagers do, but even then, that's kind of taking it a little far. Now, one thing that he does suggest is the fact that the blacksmith is able to create these using resources. Now, we do know that villagers can find pumpkins. Pumpkins can be found in chests, just in taigas and snowy taigas, and some villagers just straight up trade pumpkins. Pillager outposts can also be found with pumpkins, as can woodland mansions. All of this heavily supports the idea that pumpkins and villages are at least kind of connected, and because the pillagers have them, we can assume that most villages at some point must have had pumpkins to a degree, whether they've been mass produced or just a niche crop that the villages happen to have. We don't know that one for sure yet. But we can assume that they did have the pumpkins. The issue comes with the iron blocks. Now, while villagers do have iron blocks cannot be found naturally in anything in the game. It's not a naturally spawning block. Sure, you can find enough iron to create it, but it will never show up as a normal block. This suggests that villages don't have the ability to create iron blocks, or at least don't know that they exist. Now, obviously, there's also the question of can villagers craft, which is a theory for another episode. You think I'm joking? No, I'm just saying for the future, I'm making a theory on that. Now, he also suggests in another one of Stay Short's theories that the Iron Golem is the protector of the village. The villagers create them, but they use the souls of the dead villagers to create it, with it basically being a walking corpse in a way of villager souls from dead villagers who passed during the undead invasions or the pillager raids. This is to me a much more likely theory, and it would explain the human-like characteristics with the nose and the bloodshot eyes and the bags. It also explains why the Iron Golem doesn't need sleep because it's not a villager. It's a creation. Something made by the villagers, or at least their essence. One that maybe has multiple souls in it, with them kind of taking shifts, explaining the constant tiredness of the golem, even when it spawns in. He also compares the Iron Golem to the Snow Golem, the only other golem in the game currently. The Snow Golem deserves its own theory on how it could actually mean something in the lore, weirdly enough. But for this, we need to know the Snow Golem's connection to emotions and intelligence. The Snow Golem is far dumber than the Iron Golem, to put it slightly. The Iron Golem clearly knows what it's doing. It can fight, and it actually can move around pretty decently. Meanwhile, the Snow Golem kind of just wanders around aimlessly, and occasionally will throw a snowball, which does pretty much nothing to a hostile mob. The Snow Golem is also a passive dash neutral mob. It will rarely actually attack anything, and it only attacks anything in certain versions. Meanwhile, the Iron Golem will always hit whatever hits it, whether it be a player or an aggressive mob. It also will defend villages, meaning that if you hit a villager of any kind, the Iron Golem will become aggro to you, unless you push it in the lava and make it look like an accident, which you can debate the morality of, and I'm not going to deny that I've done that at least twice. Now, Stay Shorts also compares the Iron Golem and Snow Golem's emotions, with the Iron Golem being able to reach out and give poppies-roses to players, or villagers. Now, where it gets these from is up for debate. You could say that it finds it on the ground, then you have to ask, well, how does it find it in a snowy taiga? You could say it gets it from the villagers, then you have to ask, well, how did the villager hold it? And if so, can villagers place blocks? And if it got it from the player, then what happened? How? Like, you don't hand it to it. Well, you can, but sometimes it spawns in with it. Stupid. Anyway, this is clearly showing how the Snow Golem and Iron Golem have some sort of difference in essence. While both require similar ingredients, being a pumpkin and blocks, one is clearly dumber than the other. This is even shown in the design, with the Iron Golem showing its iron pretty proudly and only having the human-like characteristics on the face, resembling a villager, with the bloodshot eyes, eyebrows, and nose again. Meanwhile, the Snow Golem is nothing like a human or villager. It's just two pieces of snow stacked on each other with a pumpkin. And if you shear off the pumpkin, it reveals a third snow block with a smiley face. This suggests that the creation process, whether it be the literal or the essence, however you want to phrase that, is different between the two mobs. The Iron Golem clearly is smarter than the Snow Golem and stronger. Again, Stay Shorts says that the Iron Golem maybe has this intelligence because of the villager souls and, again, emeralds, but I'm going to instead suggest the idea that totems of undying from woodland mansions and dropped on death by evokers show this a bit more, potentially without the emeralds representing any kind of magic and instead just the souls of the golem being the only thing driving it. This brings up another good point, which is the fact that the golem can hold items, something pretty much impossible by most mobs. The golem actually has the ability to hold a rose or poppy, depending on what version you're playing in dash what update. Now, this kind of implies that the villagers might be able to hold stuff, albeit basic stuff, again like flowers, seeds, etc. But that's still pretty big information considering the only mobs known to be able to pick up and place items normally is the Enderman and the player itself. Now, if the golem could hold swords and axes, this would easily change a lot of things, but it can't, suggesting the idea that the golem is pacifist, again supported by the idea that souls are inside of it, not wanting to cause harm, but instead only acting as a defensive deterrent against the aggressive mobs like the pillagers and zombies. Now, I'm assuming everyone here has heard of game theory, and if you haven't, well, it's a show hosted by Matt Pat and currently by Tom, as Matt Pat has recently retired. I'm sure you've heard of this. And if you haven't, go watch it. It's just this, but better. But Matt Pat once suggested the idea that the Iron Golems were created by an ancient race of builders who were lost to time due to the high amount of mobs, them creating the Wither, and them going to the end to hide, and eventually turn in the Enderman. I think that this is plausible, the idea that the golems were created by these ancient builders. MatPat once suggested that the villagers potentially were descendants who have forgotten how to build and were instead now just normal mobs, essentially. Now, I'm not going to say this is 100% correct because, again, I do think that souls definitely connect to the Iron Golem. I think Mojang has made that fairly clear, especially as of the more recent updates, adding stuff like the totems of undying, etc. But now I think we can confirm that the golem has some sort of soul, whether it be villager or potentially even ancient builders who are now protecting their great grandkids or whatever the villagers are to them. Who knows? Now, it would explain a lot of the inconsistencies if it does have the souls of maybe villagers and the ancient builders. However, that also brings in the question, how did the ancient builder souls get in there, since most of them just turned in the Enderman? Which, again, another theory for another day. But The idea that the Iron Golem is now a widespread entity in the world of Minecraft, created once by ancient builders or potentially even just by the villagers, would explain a lot about the mob. So I guess that helps us answer the question of where is the Iron Golem in Minecraft's lore and what does it do? It's a protector of the village. Whether it be created by the villagers themselves or the ancient builders, it was made to protect. It's not aggressive and it doesn't really do anything bad. It's honestly kind of pacifist, if anything. It likely has some connection with the pillagers, considering their connections with the totems of Undying, which, again, another theory for another day. And there's likely some connection level between it and the Snow Golem, albeit it's not as strong as one would think at first. So, do you agree with all this? Tell me in the comments below. After all, this is a theory channel, and this is the first theory. Thank you for watching this far if you are. Please subscribe. And as always, have a good day.